Just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back with another one, guys. Well, guys, we are right in the middle of the offseason right now, and this is our way too early positions of need for the Indianapolis Colts. This is obviously pre-free agency, pre any trades that might happen, any cuts that might happen, obviously before the draft. So this is just us after watching the 2024 season, kind of talking about, okay, what are our top 5 positions of need for the Indianapolis Colts going into the 2025 offseason? And just for fun, we threw in a wild card position as well. One that we could go either way on. Like we could see, we wouldn't be shocked if the Colts took, and applied some serious capital into this position, but it may not be necessarily, in our opinion, a top 5-1. And so as we normally do, Derek and I have our different lists, and there's some agreement, there's some disagreement, which I think is always good to have some healthy disagreement. So without further ado, Derek, let's start with, I would say, probably the unanimous number 1 for a lot of Colts fans, and that is the tight end position. I mean, Derek, when you look at this position, I think it's fairly obvious that the Colts either don't have guys that can stay healthy on their roster at tight end, or they really just don't have very talented guys right now at their tight end position. I mean, Derek, I think it's very telling when Mo Alie-Cox was your best tight end last year. I mean, this is the guy that we've routinely talked about, and not just us. People have talked about, could he be a guy that could be a veteran cut, right, the last couple of years? And he was your best tight end in 2024. And we all saw the stats, Derek. I mean, just the pathetic stats in reference to just the a lack of production from that group. I mean, you had guys routinely dropping passes and running wrong routes and not looking for the ball. It was just a disaster overall. And in my opinion, Derek, when you look at all these positions, I definitely feel like tight end is one that I think of any of them needs probably the biggest complete overhaul of all of them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, tight end at number 1, I think that's when most people, like you said, would look back on this. Because, again, you look at the whole group as we sit here, Jelani Woods is showing you he can't stay healthy. And even if he does, who knows if he's going to be even the number 1. I mean, again, he was the number 4 tight end, Cody, on this roster in training camp before he went down. Just remember that. And then Mo Alie-Cox, who knows if he's going to be back after this offseason. And even if he is, he's not going to get paid a lot of money. We know he doesn't do anything to help the offense other than blocking. As far as Will Mallory goes, Will Mallory's been a healthy scratch for the majority of his young career. And even in the times that he has been in, hasn't really done anything to help the offense. Andrew Ogletree, again, he has his ups, he has his downs, but just never really stays consistent. And Kylan Granson, way too many drops last year. Just a liability when trying to ask to have the ability to go through him. I think it's the one position, Cody, on this whole team where you're like, it's not even the fact that you don't have anybody on there. You don't even have a good player anywhere. Like, I mean, honestly, I think we all can agree that all of our tight ends are average to below average in practically everywhere else. So you need somebody there that's going to pick up that ability. The Indianapolis Colts are dead last in tight end usage in the league when it comes to passing. Again, that has a lot to do with the quarterbacks that are throwing the football to them. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, you don't have a tight end that's separating themselves amongst the group and actually showing that they deserve to have the ball. So that can go both ways.
And you really haven't invested in that group, Derek, in any sort of like substantial way since probably Jelani Woods was drafted. And that's the guy that hasn't played substantial amount of football in 2 years. So that tells you all you need to know right there. And I think that's why for a lot of people, that 14th pick for the Colts it's pretty consensus. And I know some people would disagree with this. A lot of people are projecting Tyler Warren there, and there's other tight ends as well in this draft. But Derek, I think if there's any position on this roster for the Colts that I would not mind them double dipping in, I think it'd be tight end. I would not mind going and getting a guy in free agency and also drafting a guy or two. Like, I would not mind that at all because, like you said, there's nobody on this roster right now that really has separated themselves. And they've had multiple years to do it, and nobody's done it. So I think that tells you, like, these group of guys as they currently stand, they're not it. You need to majorly upgrade at that position. And, if you still are trying to see if Anthony Richardson is your guy, wouldn't you want to get him as many quality targets as you possibly can? I mean, Derek, we know he's struggled in that short to intermediate game. And I think getting a player like a Tyler Warren or a Harold Fanning Jr., and there's so many other guys at this tight end position too, I think getting a quality tight end that is proven going to be a stud, I think that would go a long way, Derek. And just even getting like a reliable guy that's going to run the right routes. He doesn't have to be this crazy like Travis Kelce type of guy, but a guy that's even efficient would be nice at this point. That's how poor it was. Now, if you get Tyler Warren, that's a lot of upside right there. I mean, he's bigger than Brock Bowers, and he does a lot of things. He's very, very versatile. I mean, they gave him – he's run the ball, Derek. He's done about everything. He's lined up as a running back, wide receiver, tight end. So he's kind of that jack of all trades there. But regardless of that, Derek, tight end is 100% the biggest need for the Colts. And some people would disagree with that, but I think you saw last year where that position is considered to all the other positions we're going to talk about. The cupboard is so far and away much barer at the tight end position. So with that being said, let's move on to number 2. And this is, I think, the last time, Derek, we will agree on a position. What is that position, and why do you have it here at number 2?
Yeah, so safety is another one. And, it'll be funny. It'll be funny to think about it if for some reason Chris Ballard brings back Julian Blackmon, which even if he did, I still feel like it definitely would need it. Again, the Indianapolis Colts this last season, Nick Cross, how ironic is it, Cody, that Nick Cross, so everyone said that is the number one concern going into the defense this year was Nick Cross. And unequivocally enough, he's one of the last few concerns we have about the defense at the end of the offseason, which is crazy to think about. But again, Julian Blackmon, he missed a little bit of time this year. His production was not as good as it once was. One of the top guys in missed tackles this last year. And, you're still looking for a true ball hawking safety that is going to make an impact in the secondary. We're still looking for that. And so for me, that's why I would put safety at number 2.
Yep, exactly. And to be fair to Julian Blackmon, he was playing through that injury. But yeah, I mean, still, either, you point to the fact that he didn't play well. The injury was a factor, sure. But yeah, there was a lot of missed tackles. And also the fact that he was injured again. And to his credit, he played through it. But Derek, I think that speaks to the fact that you had no quality depth behind him, that he couldn't miss games because you literally had nobody else there. So even if you did bring him back, I think you're absolutely right. You need a guy in there that is going to be consistent in his play and consistent in terms of staying healthy. And again, you can never predict these injuries, but I mean, Derek, you look at Julian Blackmon his first couple of years with the Colts, and pretty much every year he's missed some time somewhere, whether it's a major injury, minor injury, he's missed some time. So with that being said, you need a guy that you can rely on to be there and to be productive. So 100% agree with you there. You haven't had a true difference maker at the free safety position in a while. Honestly, probably since Julian Blackmon's rookie year, it's been that. So yeah, it's been a while, and I think you definitely need to upgrade there when it comes to the safety room. And I know that obviously the Colts have brought in a lot of these DC candidates that are going to be focusing and specializing in that, defensive back room. So I do think that is definitely something the Colts could consider. And there's some guys in round 1, there's some guys in round 2, and even a little later that could make some sense for the Indianapolis Colts. And there's probably going to be some guys that come up in free agency too. So I definitely think that is a position that needs some overhaul. Even if, you bring back Julian, you say he's our starter, you 100% need to add majorly to that group. But we'll have to see when it comes to that. But I definitely think safety is a big one, because especially free safety, because right now you don't have a starter under contract. You don't. So with that being said, let's move on to number 3, Derek. What would your number 3 be? This is where we start to disagree a little bit.
I think that number 3, ironically enough, is going to be running back. And I know a lot of people will be here and be like, hello, Jonathan Taylor. Yes, I completely understand that. Running back, you're not looking for a number 1 at the position. You're looking for the depth pieces. And I think that it is unequivocal just how much we miss Zach Moss from just a year prior to now. Jonathan Taylor, he missed some more time this year, Cody, and it was clear as day. When you had no Jonathan Taylor, your run game, non-existent. Non-existent. It did not exist. You barely ever got 50 yards. You could barely even win games with him running the football, let alone without running the football. So it was blatantly obvious of that. And also, I feel that it is very paramount that Steichen and a company have another running back that they can trust in certain packages that they wouldn't trust Jonathan Taylor in. There's plenty of running backs in this draft class, Cody, that are not only good at pass protection, better than Jonathan Taylor in some aspects, and are able to catch the ball better than Jonathan Taylor out of the backfield and make plays with their feet. Because again, we keep saying it. Jonathan Taylor, he's an out of the backfield guy. He's not going to be someone that you're going to be sending on a lot of routes to make a lot of plays. He's just not that kind of guy. But there's a lot of guys in this draft class that can do that for you. And I feel like that is important to keep a few snaps out of Jonathan Taylor's hands in the future, so then that way his longevity can continue and that we'll be able to have a more balanced attack at the end of the year if Jonathan Taylor can remain healthy.
And I feel like first and second down, he's top 5, 100%. But you kind of saw it in some of those third down, obvious pass situations, whether it was pass protection, whether it was, catching out of the backfield. He had some blunders this year, 100%. So that's not the type of back really he's ever been. So getting the guy that specializes a little bit more in that, kind of like what you had when you had Nyheim Hines, like a guy that you can put in certain packages that can be kind of a matchup nightmare in those obvious pass situations. I think that would go a long way in addition to the longevity. But Derek, I think because it will be a guy that, yes, will play, but I don't think will play a substantial amount compared to the other positions. That's why I don't have it as high, and that's why I have linebacker, in my opinion, as number 3, because in my mind, Derek, you're looking for a new starter at linebacker. You're not looking for a new starter at running back. And I think we all agree we're not re-signing EJ Speed. There's absolutely no way we're re-signing him after how this season happened. I mean, he was the worst linebacker in terms of missed tackles this year by a pretty wide margin. His tackle percentage was astronomical this year, Derek. He's turning closer to 30. We've obviously seen some of the ego stuff that's been happening, the lack of effort we saw from him. And I just don't think he's a guy that you bring back. I really don't. I think he's kind of part of the problem with some of the culture issues you've had. You've seen some of the attitudes, but whatever. That's neither here or there. Moving on to linebacker, I do think, Derek, you need to upgrade in terms of a guy that, number 1, can tackle, and number 2, you really need a guy that can specialize in coverage. I mean, Zaire's never going to be that guy. He's proven he's not a really great in coverage. And I think you're probably going to keep Zaire this year. You just re-signed him, so I don't think he's going anywhere. But I do think you need a linebacker. And you already have Jalen Carlisle, who I think is a pretty good coverage linebacker. But he's not a guy that I want to 100% just go and give him the other starting linebacker role. He was a 5th-round pick. I think you need to seriously invest, and I think you need to seriously invest in free agency. You need to get a veteran in there that's going to play some pretty high-quality ball for you and is actually going to be able to help in the middle. Derek, how many times did we see last year where every single time a team would attack the Colts defense, it'd be right against the middle where the linebackers are? Just about every time it felt like when they wanted to do anything substantial, and it was just way too easy. And now you bring in a new defensive coordinator. I think he'll definitely want to get a linebacker that has it has been in the NFL for a while. I mean, no offense to Carlisle, but he's going into year 2. He's still learning it. Mm-hmm. So I would like to get a true veteran in there that's going to help out in that department tremendously and can really help fill some of the issues you had last year. I know a popular name is like a Dre Greenlaw, for example. You know, a guy that, yeah, he's had some injuries, but when he's on the field, he's very productive. I think that would be a great option for the Indianapolis Colts, and I know there's going to be some other players too. But in my mind, you're looking for a new starter at linebacker, so that's why it's so high for me.
As we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Now, what is Prize Picks? Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Yeah, I totally understand it from the starter standpoint. Who knows if EJ Speed is going to be back? And, again, a lot of people not happy with Zaire Franklin at the moment either, even though I don't think Zaire Franklin is going anywhere. Yeah, so, you're definitely going to be thinking about that. I do like the depth at the position a little bit more than some people do. I think Carlisle can eventually become that much better coverage linebacker that we're so desperately looking for. I just don't think, obviously, with this injury, that kind of shut it down a little bit, and we didn't utilize him very much early on. So I feel like that kind of put a disdain on him, but I like him as a player. Grant Stewart, I like the depth. So it's like, it's funny because we're saying, we're not looking for a starter with the running back, but we're looking for the depth. We're not looking for the depth when it comes to the linebackers, but we're looking for just a new starter. So it's kind of opposite way of thinking here when it comes to number 3. So,
and that's why, in my opinion, it's more important because the starter's going to see.
I totally get it. So I just think you can throw Carlisle in there and see what you got.
I just can't put my eggs in that basket. If you're truly preaching competition, you need to get a veteran in there, in my opinion. I'm not going to hand him it like we've handed players like EJ Speed, for example. We've just they didn't add any more competition to him. He was just the guy once you decided to not re-sign Bobby Okereke. And so I just don't like that approach. Like, I want to add some true competition. And Derek, what can it hurt if you get a guy that's in there that's a veteran and has been in the league, has played at a high level, even if he's only here for a couple of years? I mean, how helpful would that be if you eventually believe Carlisle can be that guy? I mean, start him out, not having all that on his plate, being kind of a sub linebacker in certain, schemes and certain packages and stuff like that. And then eventually, maybe, year 3 or year 4, he maybe takes on that starting role if you feel like he's ready. I think that would be the right approach. That's how I would approach it.
Okay.
And I'm not the GM, obviously. So they know a lot more than I do when it comes to this, but that's how I would approach it. And I do think a defensive coordinator would want somebody in there that is proven. So that's just my opinion. Although I will say Chris Ballard has had a pretty good track history of drafting linebackers. So wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibility either. He draft one day 2 or something.
It's one of the few positions that he's actually drafted well at.
Very true. Very true. He's done a really good job, actually. So, okay, let's move on and let's talk about our number 4. And I actually lied. This one we also agree on here at number 4. What position is that?
That's the cornerback position. Again, it's just so young. And, this was a position that Ballard specifically said, like, hey, it was a mistake to run it back with some of the units that we did. And, we thought guys would have more continuity than they did. And, it just goes to show what we did. It was a mistake. And, it's good that he admits it. And that we know that this was one of the problems. Jalen Jones, I like Jalen Jones. I think he's going to continue to be a serviceable player for the time being. I don't know about Samuel Womack. We talked about him during the season. We thought he might get a contract with the team, but who knows if he's going to or not. And Juju Brents, he can't depend on him to be healthy. And, Cody, we love Kenny Moore, but Kenny Moore's not going to be around forever. He's going to be 31 this year, and, he's only has so many years left. So you have to continue to find that veteran leadership in that cornerback room. You have to continue to find veterans that even if they don't start are going to be serviceable guys that is eventually going to have to come in.
Yeah, and again, if you re-sign Womack, I think it's a solid group. I don't think it's terrible. Like I certainly think there's some other positions on this roster when you're talking about starters, like as a unit, that I think are far worse than corner. But I just don't think it's good enough. I think you definitely need to upgrade. I think you talked about it right there, like adding some true veteran, leadership in here. Like Kenny Moore's one, but adding an outside fresh voice would, I think, do wonders for this team. And, having a true number 1 outside corner would go a long way as well. And I think you might have to swing a little bit to get a guy, Derek, and bring him in. And it just kills me, man, because you see all these young corners the teams drafted last year that are balling. And it bothers me. It's just like, man, it just sucks. It's just really tough to see that, when there was all these good corners. But there are some good corners, but I just don't even want to go to the draft, Derek, if I'm honest with you, because you've swung how many times and missed how many times at this position. It's obvious Chris Ballard cannot draft corners and basically can't even draft safeties either at this point. It's pretty bad. Corners is probably one of the worst ones. Corners and edge, I would say, are probably his 2 worst positions that he drafts. Yeah. You've invested so much in both those positions, and you still don't have a true number 1 guy at either of those positions, which is crazy. But so I would definitely go the free agency route there at corner, because I think you definitely need some veteran leadership in there. And I like players like Jones, and I like players like Womack. Obviously, I like Kenny Moore. But I think you need a guy that's going to cause some friction in there, and I think you need a guy that's truly going to be that dog in their secondary. I don't know if you have that right now.
Right.
But again, it's going to take a pretty major investment here to do that. But I think you need one. I really do think you need to do it. So, all right, let's move on now to the 5th and final one that we have here when talking about our top 5s, and then we'll get into our wild card one as well. So number 5, Derek, what is that for you?
Number 5 for me is going to be the offensive line position. I think that with the fact that you might be missing Ryan Kelly after this year, and there's a strong possibility you may not have Braden Smith. We still do not know if he is going to be a part of this team's future, Cody. We still haven't heard about that personal matter that's going on. We still have no idea his availability. We still do not know whether or not he intends to retire or if he intends to come back. I don't know. So, you have to potentially think about replacing 2 offensive linemen here. Now, in the last draft, you brought in Tanner Bortolini and you brought in Matt Gonsalves to be those guys to replace them. And you've done a very good job at getting those pieces. But now you have to restock. You have to restock it. You have to reshuffle the whole deck because now, and who knows if you're going to get Will Fries back into the building too. It's going to ultimately depend on some contract stuff. So there's 3 offensive line contracts for the Indianapolis Colts that are in serious doubt this year. I'm honestly surprised I don't have it higher. But yeah, I mean, offensive line is definitely something that is going to be a lot of go by ear right here because it's going to be interesting to see who's coming back, who's not, and how they're going to reshuffle this.
Yeah, and I definitely would say address it in some way, but I think you can get Will Fries back after that injury on a pretty reasonable deal. Wouldn't mind them bringing back Glowinski, just another veteran guy in there to add some competition. Yeah, Braden Smith is the biggest wild card to me. You just don't know with him. But even so, if you do end up moving on from him, saving some money from that contract, I did like what Matt Gonsalves did put on tape. I do think he is he played well, and he played for a rookie, especially kind of being thrown in there. I thought he did a pretty good job, all things considered. So I would be okay with him being that right tackle of the future. And obviously Tanner Bortolini and also Danny Pinter played well. So I feel like you have some quality depth there. So if you do re-sign Will Fries, I do feel better about this unit. Now, would I add some competition? Absolutely. But I don't know. I kind of look at it and I say I understand that, but I'm not too overly concerned about the Will Fries thing. I do think the Colts will bring him back. But Braden Smith's the biggest wild card to me. I mean, you just don't know right now. Nobody's given any information out. We have no clue. So to me, until that does happen, I'm just not going to have it on my list because as long as he's technically still on the roster, I'm going to assume he's going to be on the roster. Now, it could change very quickly. We don't know. But if you're just replacing one position right now, so I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. Ryan Kelly's probably going to be gone. So one position right now, 100%, I think, and I could be wrong. They could re-sign Ryan Kelly, could be wrong. But I do think that, if it is just one position right now, that I think you're 100% probably going to get a new player starting. For me, that is why I don't have it as high. But I understand what you're saying. There is some concern, 100%. So the last position that I have here is one you talked about, and you had a lot higher on the list, and that's backup running back. I do believe it is important. Colts got to get a guy, like for the reasons we talked about. You got to get a guy that can specialize more on the third down, pass pro, catching out of the backfield, doing those sorts of things, taking the pressure off of JT. I do think it is important, and I think you said it right. You did miss Zach Moss a lot last year because when you had both Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor in the same backfield, it was really, really good. It was really good, and I'm honestly kind of annoyed that Chris Ballard let him go for not much money, honestly. It was kind of ridiculous that he let him go looking back on it. But, yeah, I would like for the Colts to get a quality, high-end RB2 in the middle rounds. I think that would make a lot of sense to get a guy that specializes in that department and take some of that pressure off of JT where you don't have to rely on him to have so many snaps on those third down moments and stuff like that. So, yep. Let's move on now, Derek, to our final one. That is the wild card position. What is that for you?
Wild card position for me is linebacker. As you said, we don't know about the long-term effects of EJ Speed. And, in all honesty, you have no idea about the entirety of the position itself because, I've heard rumblings that there could potentially be a major shift in the linebacker room in general for the Indianapolis Colts. Who knows? But yeah, you definitely need to upgrade it. You can keep saying about the tackle numbers all you want, but again, the tackle numbers are not all that impressive when you think about why they're getting so many tackles, and also doesn't help the fact that the majority of them lead the NFL in missed tackles on top of it, and the fact that neither of our starting linebackers are good in coverage. They're all liabilities. So you're right. It needs to be a position to address.
And then for me, the biggest wild card, again, Derek, I don't know. I kind of just threw this on here because I feel like just about every other year the Colts go after it. I'm gonna say edge again. And that might shock some people because you took an edge in round one. Derek, this is Chris Ballard we're talking about. And I look at this and I say, man, look at the other edge guys you have on your roster. I mean, you have Kwity Paye, who is a solid, not spectacular player. He's kind of a role player at this point. You have Latu, who's going into year 2. You have Dio, who's going to be looking for a new contract, could or could not re-sign with Indy. He's been kind of hot and cold. You have Samson Ebukam's coming off a serious injury. You have Tyquan Lewis. You really don't have a long-term answer right now at your edge position outside of Latu. And that for me is I'm just never going to put it past Chris Ballard to go and try to fix that. Again, he has swung and missed routinely on this position, but I don't know, Derek. Maybe it's a time where he goes out and he, swings for the fences, if you will, a little bit, as much as Chris Ballard will, in terms of maybe trying to find another solid edge to pair alongside Latu. And obviously it's going to depend on what that new defensive coordinator demands and needs on his team, but I don't know. There's just a lot of up in the air right now with this edge position outside of really Latu. So for me, I kind of look at that and I say, hey, why not, man? Why not throw another one and try to get him and maybe say, okay, similar to corner, we're not going to try the draft again. We're going to try to get a proven guy in here that can help us affect the quarterback. Look, I know that Chris Ballard said he liked what his D-line did, but Derek, the truth is you still don't have an alpha on your defensive line in the edge position. You still lack it. Now, Latu could become that guy with this new defensive coordinator, but right now where you currently stand in January 2025, you do not have that number one edge guy. You just don't. And you have Latu who you think could become that guy. But get another guy, a quality veteran in there. Maybe it is like a Justin Houston type of move. Remember Danico Autry, one of those type of moves where it's not like the 100% like highest paid player at the position, but it is like a decent value type of position where you bring a veteran in here to help with Latu, maybe help to kind of mentor him a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. This is kind of one I'm not 100% sure if I believe it's going to happen, but it's Chris Ballard. It's not about what I believe. It's Chris Ballard, and he loves his trenches, Derek. So I could honestly have gone edge or offensive line here. I mean, just anywhere in the trenches to me. It's like Chris Ballard. It feels like it's almost going to be a reality whether we like it or not. They're going to invest a decent amount of capital, whether that's draft or money type, in a trench type of player. So that's why I have it here.
Yep, I totally get you, man. I mean, edge is going to be an interesting one because who knows who's going to be back after this year, all that type of stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting because again, it's all going to matter about how Ballard shakes things up. How does Ballard shake up the entirety of the group, and how does that work for them? So
new defensive coordinator, man. So you just don't know. You don't know what guys he wants to keep and what guys you're going to ship out or cut. You just don't know at this point. So
absolutely.
We'll have to see. But guys, let us know your thoughts here on the positions of need for the Indianapolis Colts. Do you agree with our top 5? Are there any positions you would put or take off of either of our lists? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.